The human sat alone on the edge of the colony camp. The fire crackled weakly, throwing shadows against the rocky walls of the valley. Nights were always cold on this alien world, and silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. He often joked to himself to fight the loneliness, talking to the fire, talking to the stars, even talking to the pale moon that always hung in the sky. That moon was strange. It was not smooth like Earth's moon. Its surface had deep scars, sharp ridges, and mountains shaped like fangs. Every time the pale light hit those jagged peaks, they shone like silver teeth ready to bite. He had laughed once, pointing at it, saying out loud, "If a creature lived up there, I'd call her Moon Fang." The name stuck in his mind. He whispered it again sometimes when the nights grew too quiet. Moon Fang. It made him feel less alone, as if something out there was listening. But that night, something did listen. When he woke up in the morning, he noticed something strange. Just beyond his camp, where the sand met the stone, there were marks. Long curved marks, too deep for any wind or storm to make. They looked like scratches, claw scratches. He crouched down and touched them. The grooves were sharp, fresh. He frowned, looking around. Nothing moved. The desert stretched empty in every direction. Still, his chest felt tight. Maybe some animal, he muttered. But deep inside, he knew. These marks were different. Too precise, too close. That night, he tried to ignore it. He sat by the fire again, eating his dry rations. But his eyes kept drifting to the shadows beyond the flames. Every sound of the wind made him turn. Every crunch of stone made his pulse quicken. Finally, he laughed nervously and said out loud, "Moon Fang, are you out there?" His voice cracked a little, but the words floated into the darkness. The silence stretched long, like the desert itself. Then something shifted. He froze. A faint glimmer moved between the rocks. 2 points of light, eyes watching. He blinked hard. Maybe it was his imagination. Maybe a trick of the firelight. But the longer he stared, the more certain he became. Someone or something was there. The points of light blinked once. Then they were gone. He couldn't sleep. He lay awake in his tent, every muscle tense, ears straining for any sound. Hours passed. Just when he began to drift into uneasy dreams, he heard it. A sound like claws on stone, scrape, pause, moving closer. He held his breath. The sound stopped right outside his tent. He felt the weight of the night pressing down, waiting. Then silence. When dawn broke, he forced himself out of the tent. His heart hammered as he looked at the ground. There they were again, claw marks. Deep, sharp, circling the camp like a warning. He swallowed hard. "Moon Fang," he whispered. It was no longer a joke. The third night, he decided to test it. He placed some food, half his ration pack, just outside the circle of firelight. He sat back, pretending not to care, though his eyes never left the dark. Hours passed. The fire burned low. He began to think nothing would happen. Then the food was gone. He hadn't seen a thing. No sound, no shape, just gone. His skin crawled. Something had been close enough to take it without a sound. The fourth night, he tried again. This time, he set up a small camera trap, the kind miners used to track rock shifts. He placed it near the food, aimed toward the shadows. Then he waited. At midnight, movement stirred. He held his breath, watching from the corner of his eye. A tall shadow slipped into view. Not an animal. Not a beast. The figure was lean, almost human, but taller, with a tail swaying behind. The firelight caught a flash of silver, fangs glinting in the dark. The figure bent, picked up the food, and turned. For one breathless second, the glowing eyes locked with the lens of the camera. She knew she was being watched. Then she was gone, disappearing into the night like smoke. In the morning, his hands shook as he reached for the camera. The device was smashed to pieces, wires dangling, lens cracked. But one frame remained in memory. One image survived. A face alien, beautiful, dangerous. Eyes like burning silver, and a faint smile showing sharp teeth. His chest tightened as he stared at the image. The name slipped from his lips once more, but now it carried weight, fear, and wonder. Moon Fang. And deep inside, he felt it. She was real. And she was watching him. The picture would not leave his mind. All day he carried it with him, burned into his thoughts, the silver eyes, the faint smile, the tail flicking like a warning. It was no dream. It was no trick of the firelight. Something had stood there in the dark, looking at him, and it knew he had given it a name. That evening he checked his camp twice, then 3 times. He replaced the broken camera with another, this time hidden deeper in the rocks. He spread dust over the ground so he could see footprints. He even sharpened a piece of metal into a crude blade, though he doubted it would help. Still, the feeling inside him was stronger than fear, curiosity. He had to see her again. As the sun sank and the valley grew blue with shadows, the air grew heavy. He sat by the fire, but he could not eat. His eyes stayed fixed on the blackness beyond the circle of light. The desert was too quiet, as if every other living thing had left, giving space for only him and her. Hours passed. His eyes grew heavy. He nearly drifted into sleep when a faint crunch of gravel snapped him awake. He stiffened. Something was moving. Slowly, carefully, he slid his gaze toward the sound. She was there, half hidden in the rocks, tall and silent. Her eyes caught the glow of the fire, bright like twin blades. Her tail moved slowly, side to side, twitching at the tip. He felt his throat tighten. She was real, flesh and blood, not a shadow. For a long time, neither of them moved. He dared not blink. She simply stared, head tilted slightly as though she were studying him the way he had studied her picture. Finally, she stepped forward into the edge of the firelight. His breath caught. She was like no creature he had ever seen. Her body was lean, built for speed and strength. Her skin marked with faint patterns that shimmered in the moonlight. Her face was almost human, but sharper, fiercer, with silver fangs glinting when her lips pulled back in the faintest smile. Her tail curled behind her like a living whip. He swallowed hard, his voice trembling. Moon Fang. At the sound of the name, her ears twitched. She tilted her head again, then took another step closer. The firelight painted shadows across her face, making her eyes glow even brighter. Slowly, she crouched near the fire, though not too close. She sniffed the air, her eyes never leaving his. He realized then that she was listening, watching every beat of his heart, every breath he took. He forced himself to speak again, voice low, careful. "You took the food?" Her head tilted. Then, in a voice rough and broken, she echoed softly, "Food." The word was shaped strangely, but clear enough. His eyes widened. She understood. At least a little. The fire popped loudly, and she flinched, rising back to her full height. For a heartbeat, he thought she would vanish again. Instead, she reached down into the pouch at her side and pulled something out. A flower. It glowed faintly, its petals shifting colors like liquid light. She set it down between them, just outside the fire's edge. Then she looked at him once more, her tail flicking sharply, and turned to leave. Panic surged in his chest. If she walked away now, she might never return. "Wait," he called. The word broke the silence like a crack of thunder. She froze. Slowly, she turned her head, silver eyes narrowing. The firelight danced in her fangs as her lips curved into a strange, knowing smile. She tapped her claw against the ground, leaving another mark, sharp, deliberate. Then she pointed to herself with that same claw. Moon Fang. His heart hammered. She had heard him. She had accepted the name. Before he could answer, before he could even breathe, she spun and leapt into the shadows. The rocks swallowed her, and the night fell silent again. He sat frozen for a long time, staring at the glowing flower she had left behind. Its light pulsed gently as though it were alive. When he finally reached out to touch it, warmth spread through his hand, not painful, but strange, like a heartbeat against his skin. He pulled his hand back quickly, staring into the darkness. She was gone, but the marks she had left remained. Deep claw lines in the stone circling the camp once more, but this time they were different. Not only a warning, not only a threat, a message. He did not know what it meant yet, but he felt it deep inside. This was only the beginning. He whispered her name again, voice shaking, caught between wonder and dread. Moon Fang, and from somewhere in the shadows, far beyond the reach of fire or moonlight, a tail twitched once as if answering. The flower still glowed where she had left it, a small light pulsing softly in the corner of his camp. He had placed it on a flat rock, but it did not wither. It did not fade. Every night the petals shifted colors, blue, green, silver, like living fire. Sometimes it even hummed faintly, as if it carried a secret heartbeat. He could not stop staring at it, but the gift was not the only thing she had left. The claw marks around his camp grew more frequent, more deliberate. Some cut into the stone in strange curves, not random scratches, but almost symbols. He could not read them, yet when he traced them with his fingers, he felt something unsettling, like they were meant for him. He whispered her name often now. Moon Fang. Every time he half expected her to step out of the shadows, tail twitching, eyes bright. Sometimes he even said it softly before he slept, as if calling her. He began to wonder if she was waiting for him to do more. So one night he left food again. Not scraps this time, but the best of what he had, his last packet of dried fruit. He placed it carefully on the stone near the flower, then sat by the fire pretending not to watch. Hours passed. The desert wind howled. The fire burned low. When he finally dared to look, the food was gone. In its place, another mark scratched deep into the ground. But this one was not random at all. It was shaped. It looked almost like letters. His name. He froze. The air left his lungs. She had left a message, and it carried only one meaning. She knew who he was. Somehow she had learned his name. He slept little that night. His mind churned with questions. How much did she know? How long had she been watching? Why him? By dawn, his fear had twisted into something else. Hunger. Not for food, but for answers. He had to know more. The next night he prepared differently. He took chalk from his mining kit and drew his name clearly on the ground near the fire. Then beside it he drew another word, friend. He sat back, heart pounding, and waited. The hours dragged. The wind sang. The shadows pressed closer. Just when his eyelids grew heavy, he heard it, the soft scrape of claws. He stayed still, breathing shallow. From the corner of his eye he saw her, silver eyes, faint smile, tail curling behind her. She moved to the ground where the chalk marks lay. Slowly she crouched, studying them. Her claws tapped gently over the letters one by one. Then with a deliberate stroke she drew her own mark beside his. Not human letters, but alien symbols that curved like fangs. Then she looked at him. Straight into his eyes, he swallowed hard. Friend, he whispered, pointing to the word. Her head tilted. A long silence stretched between them. Then she echoed, broken but clear, and his heart leapt. She had said it. She understood enough, but the moment shattered in an instant. Her ears flicked sharply. Her eyes narrowed. She hissed low in her throat, tail lashing. Before he could ask, she was gone, melting into the dark like smoke. Confused and shaken, he followed her gaze toward the horizon. At first he saw nothing. Then far in the distance a faint light flickered, red, steady, unnatural. Not fire, not stars, machines. The next morning he found new claw marks around his camp, sharper, deeper, angrier. They cut into the stone with violent force. His name was there again, but this time it was surrounded by her symbols. They looked like warnings. He tried to focus on work, but his mind refused. Curiosity pulled him back to the flower, to the marks, to her eyes. She was trying to tell him something. She was warning him. But of what? By the fifth night his patience broke. He grabbed his pack, a lantern, and the glowing flower. If she would not speak plainly, he would go to her. He stepped into the desert, following the faint trail of claw marks that led away from camp. Hours passed as he walked. The moon climbed higher, silver light spilling across the broken rocks. Then he saw her. She stood on a ridge above him, tail flicking, watching silently. The wind tugged at her hair, her fangs catching the moonlight. For a moment, neither moved. Then she raised one clawed hand and scratched into the rock beside her, hard and fast. When he climbed closer, his chest tightened. The mark she left was not her usual symbol. It was clear. It was brutal, a shape of a ship, and around it a ring of fire. He stared at it, his blood running cold. She looked at him once more, eyes burning, then vanished into the shadows. For the first time he wondered if his curiosity had gone too far. The mystery of Moon Fang was no longer only about her. It was about something bigger, something coming, and somehow he was part of it. The mark she had carved haunted him. A ship circled by fire. It wasn't just a warning. It was a promise of something coming. He could not erase the image from his mind. That night, as he sat by the fire with the glowing flower at his side, he felt restless, as if the shadows themselves pressed closer with every breath. He whispered her name again. Moon Fang. The word carried into the night like a call, like a plea. He had stopped saying it as a joke long ago. Now it felt heavy, real. He wasn't sure if he wanted her to answer or if he was afraid that she would. The desert was silent for hours. He tried to distract himself by sketching in the dust with chalk, writing words she might learn. Safe, danger, friend. But his hand shook as he wrote, because part of him knew the truth, whatever danger she had warned of. It was already drawing near, then suddenly he felt it. That strange weight, like eyes pressing against his back. He turned slowly. She was there. Not hidden in the rocks this time. Not peeking from shadows. She stood at the very edge of the firelight, tall and silent, silver eyes fixed on him. The fire cracked softly, painting her in shifting light. Her tail twitched once, then stilled. His breath caught. She had come closer than ever before. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. He felt like a deer under the gaze of a predator, yet his heart raced with something else too. Wonder. Carefully, slowly, he raised one hand and pointed at himself. "Human," he whispered. Then he pointed at her. Moon Fang, her ears flicked. She tilted her head. Then to his shock, she repeated in her broken voice, "Moon Fang." The sound of it on her lips made his chest tighten. She accepted it fully now. It was not just his name for her, it was hers. He dared to take a step closer, but the fire popped loudly and she hissed softly, her claws flexing. He froze at once. The silence grew thick. Then slowly she crouched, her tail curling behind her, and dragged her claw into the dust. He leaned forward, breath shallow. She carved symbols again, those strange curved marks. But this time she did something new. She pointed at one, then at him. Another, then at herself. Back and forth, his heart raced. She was trying to teach him. To speak. He scrambled for his chalk, his hands shaking. He drew his name again, then the word friend. He tapped the word with his finger, then looked at her. She tapped her own mark in the dust, then repeated carefully, "Fur." And the sound made his throat tighten. For the first time, they had truly shared a word. Not stolen, not guessed, shared. But before he could say more, her body stiffened. Her ears twitched. She rose to her full height, eyes snapping toward the dark horizon. A low growl rumbled from her throat. He followed her gaze. At first he saw nothing. Then a faint glimmer of red light flickered in the distance. He knew that light now. He had seen it once before, moving slowly across the desert. Machines. Ships. His stomach sank. The danger was real. Moon Fang turned back to him, her silver eyes burning with urgency. She slashed a single mark into the dust, deep, sharp, final. Then she pointed at it, then at him. Her claws shook with the force of it. He knelt down, staring at the mark. It was one of her symbols, but he didn't need to understand the language. The meaning was clear. It was a warning. Danger. She stepped back, her tail whipping behind her. For a heartbeat, it seemed as if she wanted to say more. Her eyes softened, her hand lifted slightly, almost reaching toward him. Then, as quickly as the moment came, it was gone. She spun, vanishing into the dark with a flash of silver. The silence that followed was heavier than before. The fire crackled weakly. The glowing flower pulsed, but he felt exposed, surrounded. The desert was no longer just empty land. It was a battlefield waiting to happen. He looked down at the marks in the dust, their shared word, friend, and her sharp warning. His chest tightened with a mix of fear and determination. For the first time, he understood. She was not just playing with him. She was not just curious. She was warning him because she had chosen him. And whatever danger was coming, he was no longer outside of it. He was inside it, whether he liked it or not. He whispered her name again, voice steady this time as though making a promise. Moon Fang. And in the distance, far beyond the firelight, a faint echo answered, a howl, low and haunting. Carrying across the rocks, she was still out there. Still watching. Still waiting. The warning sat heavy in his mind. All day he could not focus. He tried to mine, tried to check his tools, but every sound made him look over his shoulder. The desert no longer felt empty. It felt watched, stalked. Even the wind seemed sharper, carrying whispers that made his skin crawl. By evening, the red light returned. He saw it blinking faintly on the horizon, moving slowly across the barren land. Not natural. Not a star. A machine. A ship. His heart pounded as he realized what it meant. He was not alone on this world. Others had come. But were they after him or her? That night he built his fire higher, trying to push back the fear. The glowing flower pulsed faintly at his side, its light calming but strange. He whispered her name softly, hoping she would appear. And she did. Moon Fang stepped from the rocks like a shadow given form, her silver eyes fixed on him, her tail twitching low and tense. But tonight she looked different. Her body moved slower, heavier. As she came closer, he saw the truth. Blood streaked her arm, dark and shining under the firelight. She stumbled once, catching herself on the rocks. His chest tightened. "You're hurt," she hissed, as if scolding him for speaking too loud, but she did not run. Instead, she dropped to one knee by the fire, pressing her hand against the wound. He moved quickly, grabbing the small medical kit he kept for mining accidents. She bared her fangs as he reached toward her, but when his hand touched the cut, she did not stop him. He cleaned the wound carefully, wrapping it with trembling hands. Her eyes never left his face. At one point, her claws twitched near his throat as though testing if he was brave or foolish. But when he tied the bandage, she let out a slow breath and lowered her hand. "Friend," he whispered. Her ears flicked. Her lips pulled into a faint, pained smile. She whispered back, broken but clear, "Friend." Relief washed over him. But the relief did not last long. She pointed toward the horizon, her claws carving the air as if drawing a shape. Then she scratched into the dirt again, another ship symbol circled with lines crossing through it. Then she slammed her claw into the mark, leaving it shattered. He stared, understanding enough. "They're hunting you," he said softly. "And they'll come here." Her eyes narrowed. She tapped her claw against his chest, sharp but not cutting. Then she pointed again at the horizon. He understood. Not just her. Him too. A chill spread through his veins. He had thought this was her fight, her danger. But now he knew whoever hunted her would not spare him. He was part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. The ground trembled faintly then, a vibration too steady to be natural. He froze, listening. Engines, distant but real. She leapt to her feet, tail lashing, ears sharp. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength and pulled him toward the rocks. They crouched together in the shadows as the fire burned low. Minutes later, a dark shape passed across the valley, not large but sleek, like a hunting craft. Its light scanned the ground, beams cutting through the night. He held his breath, his body pressed against hers in the narrow space. He felt her heart beating fast, wild like a trapped animal. The ship hovered for a long moment, searching, then drifted on. The silence that followed was louder than thunder. She finally let go of his arm, stepping back. Her claws dug into the stone as she carved another mark. 2 figures side by side, facing a larger shape. Then she pointed at him. Then at herself. Then at the drawing. His throat went dry. She was telling him the truth at last. This was not her war alone. It was theirs. He tried to speak, but the words failed. Fear clawed at him, but so did something else, resolve. He had lived alone for so long, drifting through life without purpose. But now, here in this strange desert under a broken moon, he had found something that mattered. Moon Fang's silver eyes burned as she looked at him, waiting. He swallowed hard and gave a single nod. "Yes," he whispered. "Together." Her tail twitched, and for the first time he thought he saw relief in her expression. A bond had been sealed in silence, not with blood, not with words, but with choice. The fire died behind them, leaving only the pulsing glow of the alien flower. Beyond the valley, engines hummed again, growing closer. The hunters were coming, and the war he had never asked for was now his to fight. And by his side, whether curse or gift, was Moon Fang. The days that followed were no longer calm. The desert, once wide and empty, now felt like a trap. The hunters' ships moved across the horizon more often, their red lights sweeping over the valley like watchful eyes. Sometimes he could hear them in the night, engines growling, metal claws tearing into stone. They were searching, and he knew they would not stop until they found her. Or him, or both. Moon Fang grew restless. She stayed near his camp, but never still. Her tail lashed as she paced, her ears twitching at every sound. She spoke little, but her eyes said enough. Danger pressed closer every hour. Finally, one night, she pointed toward the mountains. Tall ridges cut across the horizon, their peaks sharp like teeth. She scratched a mark into the ground, a narrow line twisting through the peaks. A path, an escape, he frowned. Through the mountains? She gave one slow nod. Then she tapped his chest, her claw firm but gentle, and pointed again at the ridges. The meaning was clear. If they stayed, they would die. He packed quickly the next morning. Food, water, tools, and the glowing flower. He could not leave it behind. As the sun bled red over the desert, they began their journey. She moved ahead, silent and sharp, scanning the land. He followed, his breath heavy, his boots crunching against the sand. For the first time, he saw her outside the shadows of camp. She was powerful, each step graceful and sure, her body built for survival in this harsh world. Yet sometimes when she thought he wasn't watching, she touched her bandaged arm and winced. She was strong but not unbreakable. They climbed into the mountains as night fell. The air grew cold, the rocks sharp. He stumbled often, but she never slowed. At one point she reached back and caught his arm before he slipped, her grip iron strong. For a moment their eyes met, and though she bared her fangs in annoyance, her tail twitched softly, as if saying she would not let him fall. But danger followed. By the second night they heard it again, the hum of engines closer than ever. Red lights flickered between the rocks. Hunters were moving into the mountains too. Moon Fang pressed him against a wall of stone, her hand over his mouth, her body close enough that he felt the heat of her breath. He dared not move. He dared not speak. A beam of red light swept across the rocks, passing just above their heads. The ship lingered, engines rumbling, then moved on. When it was gone, she released him. But her eyes were hard now, colder. She scratched another mark into the stone. 2 figures, one crossed out. Then she looked at him. His blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" He whispered. She didn't answer. She only turned away, tail lashing, moving forward without looking back. The thought haunted him as they climbed higher. Could she truly mean what he feared, that to survive only one of them would make it? He shook the thought away, refusing to believe it. She had called him friend. She had accepted the name he gave her. She would not betray him. But doubts grew like shadows in his mind. On the third night, as they rested in a small cave, he noticed her watching him. Not like before, not with curiosity, but with calculation. Her silver eyes glowed in the firelight, sharp and unreadable. He wondered then if she was measuring him, deciding whether he slowed her down. Sleep came uneasy. Dreams of claws, fire, and betrayal tore through his mind. When he woke, she was gone. Panic surged until he spotted her at the cave mouth, crouched against the rocks, tail twitching. She returned after a while, dropping a bundle of strange fruits at his feet. A gift, a reassurance, or maybe a test. They ate in silence, the bond between them shifting like sand in the wind, strong yet fragile, trusting yet uncertain. That night, as the fire burned low, she scratched into the dirt again. This time she drew a large circle with many smaller marks inside. Ships. Then she carved 2 figures in the center, you and me. Finally, she slashed a claw straight through the circle, cutting it apart. He stared at the drawing, his chest tight. She meant they would fight back. Together. Relief and fear tangled in his heart. She had not abandoned him. Not yet. But the hunters were closer, and the path forward grew narrower. Every step felt like walking the edge of a blade. As dawn touched the ridges with pale light, they rose and pressed on. The mountains loomed, the air grew thin, and the sound of engines followed like a shadow that never left. And though he wanted to believe in her, one thought gnawed at his mind, sharp as her claws. In a world ruled by survival, how long could trust last? The mountains grew sharper with every step. Jagged peaks cut into the sky like broken teeth, and the valleys echoed with sounds that did not belong to wind or stone. Engines, metal claws on rock. The hunters were closing in. He stumbled often now, his body weak from little food and less sleep. Moon Fang stayed ahead, her movements quick and sharp, but even she showed signs of strain. Her bandaged arm bled again, staining the white cloth dark. Still she pressed on, her silver eyes burning with fierce determination. At last they reached a high ridge that overlooked a wide canyon. Below, the truth was revealed. Dozens of ships rested in the canyon floor, black metal gleaming in the pale light. Hunters moved between them, tall, armored, with claws of steel. Red eyes scanned the rocks, searching, waiting. It was not just a hunting party. It was an army. His chest tightened. "There's too many." Moon Fang's tail lashed as she crouched beside him. She scratched a mark into the stone, 2 figures against many ships. Then she looked at him, her claws hovering over the drawing. Her eyes asked the question she could not speak. Would he fight with her, or leave her to face them alone? Fear roared in his chest. He was only one man with nothing but his hands and a blade of scrap metal. Against them, he was nothing. He could run, maybe hide, but if he left her, she would die. And something inside him knew. If she died, he would never forgive himself. Slowly, he reached down and pressed his hand over the mark she had made. His voice shook, but the words were steady. Together, her silver eyes softened. For a moment she looked almost human. Then her fangs flashed in a fierce grin. The choice was made. They waited until night fell. Darkness cloaked the canyon, broken only by the hunter's red light sweeping across the rocks. He tightened his grip on the metal blade. His palms sweated. His heart pounded so loud he feared they would hear it. Moon Fang crouched low, her muscles coiled like a predator ready to strike. Her tail twitched once, sharp and eager. Then she moved, silent as shadow, and he followed. The first strike came sudden. She leapt from the rocks, claws flashing, tearing into a hunter before it could raise its weapon. He froze only for a heartbeat, then charged with a shout, driving his blade into another. Metal sparked. Pain lanced his arm, but he pushed through. The canyon erupted into chaos. Lights flared, engines roared, voices screeched in a language he did not know. Hunters swarmed, but Moon Fang moved like fire. Her claws ripping, her tail striking, her fangs gleaming in the dark. And beside her, the human fought with desperate fury, each swing of his blade fueled not by strength but by choice. For a moment it seemed hopeless. They were surrounded, outnumbered. His chest burned, his body shook, but still he stood. Still he fought. Then it happened. The glowing flower, the gift she had given him, slipped from his pack and shattered against the stone. Light burst from it, brighter than fire, brighter than the moon. It spread across the canyon, pulsing like a heartbeat, shaking the ships and blinding the hunters. The hunters screamed. Their machines faltered, their weapons sparked. Moon Fang let out a fierce cry, slashing through them with renewed power. The human, blinded by the light, still swung his blade, feeling it bite into steel. When the light faded, silence fell. The canyon floor was littered with broken machines and scattered hunters. The ships burned, red lights flickering and dying. He stood trembling, chest heaving, barely able to hold his blade. Beside him, Moon Fang's silver eyes glowed bright, her fangs bared in triumph. Blood streaked her body, but her stance was strong. Slowly she turned to him. For a long moment they simply stared. Then she stepped closer, her tail twitching softly, her hand reaching out. She touched his chest just above his heart and whispered in her broken voice, "Friend." His throat tightened. He could only nod. The battle was over, but something greater had begun. Word would spread, of a human who fought beside an exiled alien who faced an army and lived. The galaxy would whisper about them, fear them, maybe even honor them. He looked at her, the one he had named under a pale moon, the one who had answered that name with silver eyes and twitching tail. She had been a shadow, a mystery, a danger. Now she was something more, a legend. And so was he. He whispered softly, almost to himself, but she heard it all the same. Moon Fang. Her lips curled into a faint smile, and the desert wind carried her answer. Not in words, not in sound, but in the unbreakable bond between them. Together they walked into the dark horizon, leaving behind fire, steel, and fear. What lay ahead neither knew, but the choice had been made, and their story was only beginning.